Hey Retro fans, welcome to episode 7 of Retro Gaming Memories. In this episode I'm going to be talking about the powerhouse that is PlayStation. Not the PS1 or the PlayStation 1 or any of that stuff. PlayStation, that's what it's called. Now unusually for me, I can't actually remember what year I got my PlayStation. It was the Christmas after it had been launched in the UK, so I can't remember, 93, 94, something like that. I do remember the reason I wanted one was kind of dual fold. Let me put this down here, hang on, rather than holding on to that for the whole thing. So yeah, the reason I wanted a PlayStation was dual fold. One was that my pal Jason had gotten a PlayStation pretty much when it was launched, and he had a few games, but he and I used to play Tekken. He got Tekken with the original Tekken, and it was amazing. We had, well, certainly I had never seen anything like it before, and although I was a huge arcade goer in the kind of early days, by the time the 90s came, I had an Amiga and stuff like that, and I'd had the Mega Drive and all that, and I kind of stopped going to the arcades in the 90s really. So the whole polygon 3D era I wasn't really interested in it. So although Tekken was in the arcades and Virtua Fighter was in the arcades, and you know, like the Street Fighter Alpha series in 3D and all that kind of stuff, although there were 3D fighters in the arcades, I had never played any of them. So when Jason brought over his PlayStation, you know, as you did back in the day, you brought your console round to your pal's house, and he brought the PlayStation with Tekken, and he had a few other games as well. He had a football game, Striker I seem to remember it was, and a 4x4 game whose name escapes me. But we used to play the shit out of that PlayStation, and primarily it was Tekken. We used to just play round after round after round of fighting. Such a good game, and that really, you know, put me right in the mood for a PlayStation. I really wanted to play this game. And the other reason that I wanted to get the PlayStation was I do remember seeing in the arcades down Portobello, if anybody's familiar with Edinburgh, it was down the Portobello arcades, and a new game had been launched, and it was, I remember going into one of the kind of bigger arcades, and I can't remember the names of them, but I remember walking into the bigger arcade, and for anybody from Edinburgh or Portobello, it was the arcade that's got a small cafe sort of on the right hand side as you come off the promenade. But anywho, I remember walking in there, and right at the front door was this massive white cabinet, huge thing, and I wondered, what's this massive thing sitting in front of me? And it had a gun. I'm like, right, okay, I love light gun games, I'm sold. What is this thing? And it was Time Crisis. And to give you an idea of how revolutionary it was, it was in 3D, and they'd kind of done that really with Virtua Cop, which again I didn't really play in the arcades, but it became one of my favourite games on the PlayStation 2, and I totally love it. But anyway, that's a sidetrack. Time Crisis was there in the arcades, and yeah, to show you how revolutionary it was, I mean, it was a massive monitor. I think it was like a 27-inch monitor, but I had the gun, which recoiled, you know, you pull the trigger and the back it slid back, but it had a pedal. I looked at this machine and I'm like, what the hell's the pedal for? There's no steering wheel. And it didn't compute, you know, what I was doing with this gun and the pedal. And I watched the sort of demo video, the attract mode that ran on the arcade cabinet, and it's like, you know, you press the pedal to hide or you know, to do the action, depending on how it's set up. And I was like, what is this? This is new. You know, I'm not sure I'll get this. And I looked, and instead of being, you know, it was like 30 pence a credit back in by that time. You know, normal machines had gone from being 10 pence, and it was now about 30 pence a credit. And this machine was £1 a shot. And, you know, I maybe went to the arcades with 10 quid. And that would last me a whole day. So this thing was £1 a shot, and I put it in, and played and rapidly got destroyed. You know, my first pound last me, I don't know, 25 seconds, 30 seconds, something like that. I got shot to bits and I didn't know what I was doing because I hadn't worked out the whole pedal mechanic and shooting thing. So stuck my second pound in and I was a little bit more aware of what I was doing and managed to get somewhere on it. And I did not too bad, and then I died and it said continue, so I stuck another pound in. Anyway, I played a fiver's worth on this machine and I nearly completed it, but it was astounding and I really loved it. Like I mentioned, I've always loved light gun games, and I'll talk about that in the sort of arcade type episode that's coming soon. But I've always loved light gun games, and this was amazing. And I found out, now I can't remember how I found out, it was probably a magazine or one of the TV shows, you know. Oh God, what was that called with Andy Crane, that TV show? Bad Influence. That was a TV show in the UK, if anybody's not from the UK. It was a really bad 90s kind of video game show where kids did reviews and things. But anyway, it was something. It was either something like that or Games Master or one of the magazines. I can't remember. But I found out that Time Crisis had been ported to the PlayStation, and I thought, that's amazing. I can have that huge arcade game in the house, and you know, that was a no-brainer. I thought, right, between Tekken and Time Crisis, I'm in. I want one of these things. So Dixon's, which was the retailers, electrical retailers at the time, who have since gone bust, but Dixon's had the machine, and you could pre-order it. There was a shortage of them before Christmas, so you went in and you pre-ordered it. Now, I couldn't actually afford the machine. It was one of the first things I got on credit, which was a slippery slope, but got it on credit, and I can't remember how much the deal was that I got. It was like 329 quid or something like that for the PlayStation, a second third-party controller. You never got an official one. I think I got a memory card with it, and I think I got 4 games with it. Now I can remember 3 of them, but I can't remember what the 4th one was. But anyway, the PlayStation was pre-ordered, and I had got the credit deal and all that kind of stuff, and I got the phone call just before Christmas. I think it was about a week and a half before Christmas, and my mum and dad had asked me what I'd wanted for Christmas that year, and I said I really want a PlayStation, but you know, by then I was working. I'd started my apprenticeship. I was an electrician, and I didn't want my mum and dad paying that kind of money for a console. You know, they'd bought. If you've watched any previous episodes, you'll already have seen how much money they spent on all these things at Christmas. But I thought I wanted to get this myself, but they wanted to give me money, so you know, I put a little bit of that money towards the actual PlayStation, and I think I bought a couple of games with the rest of it. But anyway, I got the phone call to go and pick up the PlayStation just before Christmas. So I did, and I got it home, this beautiful box of gorgeousness, with the few games that I got with it, and I was desperate for a shot, so I plugged it up just to check it was working, and I switched on the PlayStation, and that beautiful noise intro logo thing came up, and I was excited. I was buzzing with excitement. And the pack that I had got included Time Crisis, and I'm going to talk about these games in a little minute. But the pack that I got included Time Crisis and the G-Con gun, which looked like the arcade gun. And you plugged it up, and it took a little bit of looking at because I had never used the thing before, obviously. You plugged it into the front, but there was a yellow cable which actually went into the video port of your TV, and shared a port with the aerial, basically. So I plugged all this up, bearing in mind I'm just testing how this works, and I put the disc in after having kind of looked at it. I didn't want to look at it too much. Excuse me. I didn't look at it too much because I didn't want to ruin the excitement. And if you've watched my previous videos, you'll know that I scrutinise everything. You know, I look at the discs and I read the manuals and sniff them on occasion, and I read all the text and all that kind of stuff and look at the brochures and all God knows what. So I didn't want to spoil that, but I wanted a shot of the PlayStation, so I put in Time Crisis and it booted up, and I had a few shots, literally gunshots on the screen, and I switched it off because I was, you know, nigh on peeing myself with excitement at how good it was. So I switched it all off so that it would still be a surprise at Christmas. And it was just, you know, that was another one of those long waits until Christmas, waiting for the PlayStation. Although I knew what I was getting, you know, I'd put it away for Christmas, and it was a long wait. But Christmas morning came, and I got my PlayStation, and I rapidly disappeared up to my room, and I don't think my mum and dad saw me until New Year. But I went up and I just played the living daylights out of the thing, and my pal Jason came across, and we played the games that I got for Christmas, because I got some different games to what he had. And it was just a fun time was had by all. And the PlayStation, the PlayStation was an amazing machine. You know, it had that arcade experience. It could chuck polygons around at high speed, and its main competitor at the time was really the Saturn, which was another great machine. And if you loved Sega arcade games, it was a machine to have, because the arcade ports that were on it were amazing. It didn't quite have the software support that the PlayStation had, and I think that's because it was harder to program because of the architecture in it. But the PlayStation was an absolute powerhouse. The Dreamcast tried to be a PlayStation beater, but it just couldn't do it. The PlayStation kind of held supreme even through the Dreamcast era, so it beat I don't know if it beat the Saturn. You know, they were both on level pegging. You know, I've got a PlayStation, I used to have a Saturn, and it was a great machine for what it was. But I think like most of these things, it was software support that let it down. You know, it wasn't getting the third party support that it should have. And the PlayStation kept going through the Saturn era into the Dreamcast era. You know, they released the PS1 well into the Dreamcast era, and it was still going strong. But the PlayStation was an amazing console, and it had many firsts. You know, it introduced a lot of people to 3D gaming. And the fact that you could have these arcade ports at home was just astounding. And the stuff it could pull off hadn't really been seen at the time. And there are two games, and they're not in my pile here, because the games I'm going to talk about in a little minute are the ones that the sort of first ones that I got with the machine. But the two games that really stood out and defined the PlayStation, for me anyway, were Gran Turismo, the first Gran Turismo, and Wipeout. Now, Gran Turismo is an astounding piece of software. It's still fun to play to this day. The handling in the cars is really good, and it still looks pretty good even to this day. And it flies along at a rate of knots, and they really took advantage of the PlayStation technology. The fact it could chuck around so many polygons, you know, had this huge roster of cars that looked great and flew around the track at high speed, but they also had a lot of licensed music. So it utilised the CD streaming to have really good music that just, you know, it was like a proper arcade experience, really cracking, thumping music as you drove around these tracks at high speed. And it was really interesting because you could play the game like an arcade game. You could play it like Ridge Racer and just kind of, you know, fly your way around the track. Or you could play it like a simulator. You could do your license, you know, all these sort of tests that got you your license, and then you could work your way up and get better cars and all that kind of thing. I've never played really the simulation mode. I started doing the license thing, but I didn't have the patience for it. So I used to just kind of fly cars around the track at high speed. And it was just, you know, it's obviously it's still going. The series is still going to this day, which shows you how good and groundbreaking it was. And the opening movie of Gran Turismo at the time was jaw-dropping. It's still really good to this day. You know, it's a rendered animation, but it's still really good. But at the time, it was absolutely jaw-dropping. To think that you've got this game, you know, this lovely shiny black disc that you've popped in your PlayStation, and this awesomeness is hitting you in the face. It was a moment to behold, and to have moved from the 16 sort of 32-bit era of games consoles, you know, your SNES, Mega Drive, 32X a little bit, and the Amiga and all that kind of stuff, to move for that to PlayStation was just, you know, it was like moving from the Amstrad to the Mega Drive. It was that kind of leap, you know, and it was just astounding. And I still love the PlayStation. The original one just looks beautiful. I love the form factor. I love the feel. It's reassuringly heavy. It's well built. The buttons have got a beautiful, satisfying click to them. In fact, the buttons have got a lovely click to them, and the lovely smooth opening and the reassuring clunk. I don't know what it is. It just feels like a real quality machine. And it's got a nice weight to it, and plus, I mean, look at it. It's iconic. It's gorgeous. Anyway, the other game was Wipeout, and Wipeout it just made your eyes bleed. It was so fast and so colourful and so futuristic, and the physics that was in it had never really been seen before, and it was almost mind-bending how good it was. And the fact that they had got artists to do the soundtrack for it, you know, it had a really brilliant techno soundtrack to it. Bearing in mind that, you know, mid-90s techno was all over the place. It was the thing to have. So to have this brilliant sort of electronic soundtrack over it, you know, which just fit the futuristic visuals of it, and have these ships that just kind of hovered and flew around the track, literally. You know, and kind of doing the drift mechanic but on air brakes, flying around the corners, and then having weapons that you could just take out your opponent. It was just this brilliant mix of racing and shooting and thumping music, and it was such a good mix. And for all you film buffs out there, if you watch, I'm pretty sure it's Hackers, there's a bit in Hackers, which is an old film with Johnny Lee Miller and Angelina Jolie in it. And if you watch it, it's laughingly bad. Apart from anything else, the technology, and it's just nonsense. But they go into a bar, and there is a huge screen in the bar, and it's playing a prototype of a Wipeout, and it looks as if they're playing it in the movie, but they're not. It was just a kind of rolling tech demo. But it's kind of, you know, it piqued people's interest. I'm like, what is that thing that's playing? So yeah, anyway, those were the two sort of standout games that really defined the PlayStation. You know, and I don't need to give you a history lesson on the PlayStation. Everybody knows about it. It's such an iconic piece of kit. But what I'm going to do now, because I've waffled on for nearly 20 minutes, is I'm going to run through the games that I got with the PlayStation. So first up, as I've mentioned, is Time Crisis. I always have to look and try and get this without the glare. There we go, Time Crisis. So this is the pack-in version. There we go. This is the version that came with the G-Con gun. And the box is sort of very first generation PlayStation, so the boxes were slightly different from normal CD cases. They had this kind of black plastic, and I remember taking this out and, you know, sniffing the manual, and then getting the disc and seeing that the discs were black, and bearing in mind that normal CDs at the time were obviously silver. It was amazing to have this disc that was differently coloured, and I thought, oh, that's cracking that, and, you know, I'll not get anything mixed up. But anyway, I got this with the G-Con gun, and it was amazing to be able to play the game in the house. And the cracking thing is there's the arcade version, but there's also a console exclusive version, which does slightly different things. But to have the gun control, the G-Con gun, and that was just a brilliant experience. And the good thing is the G-Con gun, which I don't have to hand, I should have been prepared and got it. The G-Con gun, I'll put a picture up here, had buttons on the front of it, so you could use that to mimic the pedal in the arcade machine. So you press that for your action button, which was fine, but it meant then you were holding a pistol, which you normally held, bang. You know, you were holding it kind of more like a sort of mini rifle thing, and it felt a bit restrictive. But Namco thought about that, and they gave you the option to put a controller on the floor that you could tap with your foot. So you plugged a normal controller into port 2, and you could tap the controller with your toes, and it acted like the pedal, so you could still hold the gun and shoot the gun, you know, just like the arcade game really. And it was great. You did have to be careful that you didn't get overzealous and kind of crush your controller. I always used to use the third party one just in case I did get over eager and kind of smash it, because the third party controllers were always shit. But yeah, so PlayStation Time Crisis was brilliant, and I just adored having it in the house because, like I mentioned, I love light gun games, and it's an absolute stonker. And to have that arcade experience, full arcade experience in the house, was it was groundbreaking, and it was I just loved it, and I still love playing Time Crisis. So it's one of my favourite series to this day. And I've got them from the PlayStation original Time Crisis right up to Time Crisis 4 on the PS4, PS3, PS3. Sorry. So I've got them all right the way through the whole series. You know, on the PS2 and PS3. So it's a great series. And if you've never played it before, then you must have been hiding under a rock. But if you've never played it, seek it out and give it a go. It's brilliant, and don't play it on an emulator because it sucks playing light gun games on an emulator. Anywho, the other game that I absolutely loved, and it was almost resident in my PlayStation. I've mentioned my pal Jason before that he used to come across to play Tekken. Well, when I got my PlayStation, there was no point in me getting Tekken because Jason had it. So I got the brand new Tekken 2. Now this was an amazing game. It was hugely superior to the first game, and its visuals had been totally revamped. I mean, at the time Tekken was really in contest with Virtua Fighter. So Tekken technically has slightly more polygons than Virtua Fighter. And Tekken 2 really pushed it because Virtua Fighter 2 really pushed the polygon count, because back in the day it was all about how many polygons you had. You know, and Virtua Fighter 2 had really pushed up the polygon count to make Virtua Fighter 2 look better in the arcades and on the Saturn. So when Tekken 2 came out, they had really pushed it, and I mean, it's a beautiful looking game. The animation in it is amazing. You know, when you're doing kicks or punches, you feel like you're landing a solid hit. You know, it's got really nice tight controls to it. And there was a bigger roster of fighters and all that kind of stuff. And Jason and I, we just, every time we'd come over, we'd just fire up Tekken and play Tekken, well, Tekken 2. And it was interesting because when I played Tekken, I played as Martial Law, because he was a sort of Bruce Lee type character, and he was the easiest. You could button bash with him and get kind of results. But in Tekken 2, I started trying out the different characters. So, you know, I'd play as Law if I wanted to button bash just for a quick game, but I would play as Lei, the sort of Jackie Chan character. Essentially, he does kind of a lot more sort of kung fu type moves, and he does like drunken style kung fu and all that kind of thing. and you can change his style. You know, and the animation in it is just beautiful. When he goes into the kind of drunken mode, you know, his hands are all kind of loose and he's lolling about the place. And it's just great. And I would play as Paul, who does judo. You know, he's got massive, spiky, ridiculous hair. But I played as these different characters, and I actually invested time to get better at playing the different characters. And it was a much more fulfilling experience. Tekken, the original Tekken, felt very much like an arcade game. There was only 8 fighters in it, I think. You know, well, it was an arcade game. But Tekken 2 had a whole new depth to it, and you know, you could invest time learning the characters, and you felt rewarded. You know, if you had a roster of moves, you felt a bit rewarded for it. So Tekken 2 was almost permanent in the PlayStation, and I absolutely adored it, and I still love it. It might be my favourite in the series. It would be a toss-up between Tekken 2 or Tekken 3 for being my favourite. Even despite all the new modern, you know, sexy looking ones, for gameplay and just overall, Tekken 2 is just the nuts. So I've mentioned the Saturn a couple of times during this waffle, and one of its big sellers was Sega Rally. You know, there were a lot of arcade exclusives that the Saturn got because it was a Sega machine. And to be honest, back in the day, I didn't really know much about the Saturn, and being the arcade head that I am, I probably should have, because it probably would have been the machine that I'd picked, you know, if I'd thought about the arcade ports that were on it. But I didn't. Anyway, I had the PlayStation, and obviously Sega Rally wasn't ported to the PlayStation. So you had to look elsewhere for your rally kicks, and whilst you could get them a little bit in Gran Turismo 2 when it came out, the game of choice that I had was V-Rally. Now this, see if we can show you some pictures there. It was a cracking game. Really shit title music, I remember that. It was a sort of jazz thing. It just, you know, it wasn't the energy pumping soundtrack like Sega Rally that you wanted to, you know, get you jumping in a car and driving fast. It was this really bizarre jazz thing. But once you got into the game, it was brilliant. It handled really well. It wasn't as good as Sega Rally, but it was a good version to have on your PlayStation. You know, it was I don't know if it was as close as you were going to get, but for me, it was the only one I had experience to. You know, I didn't have any of the other kind of rally games that were around at the time, but it ticked the boxes. It looked kind of like Sega Rally, and it played like Sega Rally. One thing you could do in V-Rally that you couldn't do in Sega Rally was crash a car, and by that I mean actually flip it. This thing, you know, you could, especially if you're on external views. You know, if you hit a tree or something, it would flip the car around, or, you know, worse, if you were up an embankment, it would roll it over. You know, so the crashes in V-Rally were quite spectacular. And it moves along at a decent clip, and it's got a good draw distance. Because that was one thing about these consoles at the time, the draw distance, which is how far into the distance the screen appears to look, essentially. You know, so if you're driving down a big long road, you know, if you've got a short draw distance, you can only see sort of half the road, and they used to use like fog to you know, make it look as if it was the road was coming out of the fog, but really what it was doing is only rendering half the road. But the draw distance in that was pretty good, because the Saturn and early PlayStation games used to suffer from pop-ups, so you'd be driving along and all of a sudden buildings would pop up because the machine was struggling to keep up with the rate of things that were going on. So V-Rally had a really good draw distance, and you know, the graphics flew along at a decent clip, so it was a great alternative to Sega Rally if you didn't have a Saturn. Now, bearing in mind, back in the day, you only had one, maybe two consoles if you're really lucky, but you only had one, really. You know, so it's not like now where I've got 15 consoles and I can play all these different games on different machines. You know, I didn't have that back in the day. You had one machine, really. So yeah, so I couldn't experience Sega Rally in the house, so I had V Rally. Anyway, moving on. The next game that I'm going to talk about was the first Platinum game that I bought. Now, the Platinum series on the PlayStation was the budget release, and it was re-released software for $19.99 instead of, you know, whatever it was, $39.99 or whatever the full retail was on these games. And that game is Alien Trilogy. Now, some people don't like this because it feels slightly limited. It looks great. It uses bitmap graphics instead of 3D visuals. Well, that's not strictly true. It uses 3D for some of the stuff, but the character graphics that come towards you, like the alien and all that, are bitmaps. But what that means is they kind of look more like... It was a mixture of 3D technology and Mortal Kombat technology, so the characters they were like digitized almost, so they looked really good, and the corridors and all that were 3D tunnels, so it had a really nice atmosphere to it, and I suppose it meant as well that it could move along at a decent clip because it wasn't rendering all these aliens running about. But the game was brilliant. It felt claustrophobic, and it felt the atmosphere in the game was really good, and the only thing that felt slightly off for me was the gun that you start with, sort of pistol. It kind of would fire and then you'd see this bullet go off and, you know, it would ping off things, and it was quite a weak machine. And it didn't really feel like you were firing a gun. It was kind of strange. But then when you got like the flamethrower or the machine gun, that changed. So it was only really the pistol that was a bit kind of disappointing. But the game looked cracking, and it played really well, and it's the only Alien game that I've actually been able to play, because there's a mechanic in the Alien series that just terrifies me, and it's such a great tension building mechanic, and it's the motion tracker. So if you're not familiar with the motion tracker, and hopefully you are, everybody's seen Alien surely, but it's basically what they use to build tension in the movies. So it's a little kind of radar type thing that you see on your screen, and it clicks. It does this as it's kind of tracking movement, and that's fine, you know, as long as it's clicking, there's nothing happening. But then if it picks up movement, you get this whistle noise, so it gives it this kind of mad, and if it's low pitched it means there's something moving but it's quite far away. But as soon as you hear that, you start to get a bit tense, and you hear this thing, so it's clicking away and you've got that low pitch whistle, but then you hear this, and it raises pitch, and that means this thing's getting closer. And by the time it's hitting high pitch, you know, I'm running backwards spraying every bullet I've got, and it's such a clever mechanic for nothing happening on a screen at all. It's just your ears, and it's such a great tension building thing. The Alien Trilogy is the only game that I've been able to play. I tried playing Alien vs Predator on the PC back in the day. I lasted 5 minutes. It was just terrible. And the modern ones, Colonial Marines and that, Jesus God, it makes me feel like I'm going to have a heart attack. And it's not that I'm scared, you know, the alien beast things don't actually scare me in a sort of horror sense. It's just that tension is just, you know, I feel it tightening around my chest. Anyway, that's enough of me being scared about Alien Trilogy. Alien Trilogy is a great game, and it was an amazing feat to see on the PlayStation, on this little grey box, because I'd played things on the PC. You know, I played like Duke Nukem and Quake in the latter days, but what else? Dark Forces and Doom, obviously, all these kind of things. So to play that that brilliant sort of alien first-person shooter on a console, and the controls really worked. That was the other thing, I suppose, as well, is the controls were really good on it, because I had been used to using W, A, S and D and a mouse to play these games, which gave you a really fluid control. But the Alien Trilogy really worked. The controls in it were really nice and tight. So it was such a good game. So I would recommend picking that and having a go if you like the Alien films and you like first-person shooters. And the last game I'm going to talk about for now, I'm sure you'll all be relieved, and if you're still awake, back in the, well, I suppose it started in the 70s, but right in the late 80s and early 90s, skateboarding was the big fad in the UK. You know, it had come across from America, everybody was going daft for skateboarding. I even had a skateboard, believe it or not, and I was not too bad on it. I fell off plenty, but you know, I was alright on it. But we became aware of this chap called Tony Hawk, not Tony Hawks, who's someone different, but Tony Hawk had his own skateboarding game, and that is what I'm going to talk about now. There we go, Tony Hawk skateboarding. Now, I'm sure many people, if you had a PlayStation, I'm pretty sure you played Tony Hawk skateboarding, even if you weren't really a skateboard fan. Tony Hawk skateboarding was brilliant. It made you wince when you fell off. The music in it was great. It was that kind of, no punk rock, but that kind of indie rock, sort of Blink 182-ish type soundtrack, Green Day and all that kind of stuff. It was a cracking soundtrack, sort of indie soundtrack, and the mechanics, they managed to get skateboarding really well captured, the mechanics of it, because obviously you've got to kick to move your player, move your skateboard and all that kind of stuff, and you know, pressing a button might not feel natural, but the way they thought about the controls on it was really good. It really worked, you know, and you could spend ages just kind of sliding about on the park and just kind of rolling up and doing little jumps and all that kind of stuff, and most people probably did. Just, you know, get a couple of good big jumps going, and that was great fun, you know. But if you invested a little time in it, you could, you know, you learned all the tricks, all the grinds and all that kind of stuff, and doing all the flips and stuff, the 180s and whatever, 270s, 360s, all that kind of stuff. You know, learning how to do all those tricks and pressing multiple button combos when you're in the air and flipping all over the place and doing board jumps and all that kind of stuff. It was great fun, and there were a lot of good challenges in it. You know, you could do tricks to collect letters and all that kind of stuff and get extra things and unlock different bits. If you could unlock secret areas if you did big jumps and smash through windows and all that kind of stuff. It was a really good game. It was a really clever game. Again, the way that they did the mechanics of the gameplay mechanics, and it went on. It's another series that's endured and is still going. You know, and Tony Hawk's 2. I don't think you could do it in the first one, but certainly in Tony Hawk's 2, you could make your own courses or skateboard parks. And it's just a great series, and you know, I've spent many hours falling off my skateboard in the virtual sense, you know, and sometimes you would push yourself just to see if you could get a massive jump but not land it, just to see him kind of break his face as he hit the deck. You know, it did make you wince, the noise of the skateboard flying off and you hitting the deck, it did make you wince. It was very clever. But yeah, so that is my what's that, 1, 2, I've got them all just off camera here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games that I remember in the early days of the PlayStation. Now again, these games aren't the best games on the PlayStation, they're not the best known games on the PlayStation, they're just the ones that I've got initial memories of. I will be doing, after at least the first 10 episodes, I'll be kind of nipping in and doing extra episodes of my top 10 games on whatever, you know, the PlayStation or CD32 or whatever. I'll be doing that sort of series, the top 10 type series. So, you know, tune back in for that kind of thing and see if you agree with the games that I've picked. But yeah, anyway guys, like that's going to do it. You know, I've waffled enough. If you love the PlayStation or you have any thoughts, you know, let me know. And thanks so much for your comments so far. You know, it's been great reading your comments. and your sort of stories and reactions to things. Please do keep them coming. You know, I like to read them. So yeah, let me know your experience of the PlayStation. Do you love it as much as I do? You know, or do you think the Saturn pisses all over it? You know, I don't want to start a console war or anything. I love both of them, but you know, what's your experience of the machine? Do you love it? Do you still have one? Did you think it was a pile of crap? You know, let me know what you thought. And yeah, as ever, like, comment, subscribe, get in touch, tell all your pals, and yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.